Welcome to another episode of our Personal Empowerment Premium Audio Series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is entitled The Story of Your Life. What we're talking about really is that life is a story you write, not so much all the stuff that happens. You know, we have some control over that, but a lot of stuff just happens. But the way you experience what happens really is the story that you write. What you have going in, the preconceived notions you have about how it's going to turn out, and the self-fulfilling prophecies you create, the habits that you have. For example, the habit you have about procrastination. Some people are big-time procrastinators. Some people don't procrastinate very much. You know what you are right now, and that's going to dramatically affect your future. The habit you have about being big goal-oriented or being afraid of disappointment, so being afraid to set big goals. The future that has not even yet happened is dramatically affected already by those preconceived decisions you've made, attitudes you have, the way you look at life. So we're going to talk about how to rewrite the future by rewriting the present in your mind.
We've all heard that saying, that old saw, that life is what you make it, and I think initially people tend to agree with that. If asked, what do you think about this, they probably smile and nod and say, yeah, it's true. But I don't think, if pressed deeply, people really believe it. I mean, maybe to some extent, but I know the vast majority of people behave as if life is done to them, as if they're an effect or a victim of a life that's coming at you. And it's because we're enculturated, educated, and conditioned to see ourselves as targets, primarily by advertising. You know, there's a law you learn in the very first ad class or marketing class you take in school called homeostasis. It says people are basically happy exactly where they are. Things are just fine in almost everybody's life.
Inside their comfort zone.
Yeah, to a relative degree, of course. And so advertising is really the art and science of knocking you off center a little bit, disturbing you, and causing you to believe that things really aren't that good, and that you really have some serious problems that only our product or our service can resolve or redeem for you.
Dylan had a great line. He said, advertisers that con you into thinking you're the one that can do what's never been done, that can win what's never been won. Meantime, life outside goes on all around you. From It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding.
So advertisers do this for sure, but it's not even limited to advertising. This is what leaders and movers and shakers and opinion makers all do, is say, you need me. You need me because I am a leader. And I'm going to help you solve the problem that you could never solve by yourself. And this is what government does. And the media, oh my God, it gets its authority, its perceived authority, from the fact that it knows things you don't know, and it's going to tell you. And so, yeah, it's a two-way street, but people feel generally as if 90% of it's coming at me and only a little bit comes out of me or through me. And it's just not true. What you do with what's done to you, the opportunity and circumstances, whether you see them as positive or even profoundly negative to begin with, what you do with those circumstances and opportunities trumps what's coming at you any day. And what you initiate out of whole cloth, what you give to the world, offer up and give away. You know, every axiom we've ever heard about empowering the human being is give and then receive, sow and then reap. Treat other people as you would have them treat you. We got to get the order down. And when Steve and I talk about writing the story of your life, we don't mean just recording what's already happened, like in a diary or a journal, but writing the story in advance of what's happening now.
Yeah, because although, as we say, you may not have much control over the stuff that happens. You do have some, you can put yourself in the right place at the right time, but you may not have much. But the story you've already written up until now about you, the way you think you are, is going to profoundly influence whatever happens to you, how you're going to respond to whatever happens to you. the priming that you do. For example, if you're in a bad mood, you're in a bad mood. So whenever something happens, you're more likely to see it in a negative way because you're in a bad mood. Now, if you're in a really good mood, whatever the same exact thing happened, you're much more likely to give it the benefit of the doubt and see it in a much more positive way. So the same thing happened, but the way you experience it is based on what you bring into it. I just read this wonderful book, which is You're Not as Smart as You Think You Are, basically the concept was. And what it's saying is we fool ourselves into believing that we're really in control, but we're dramatically affected by outside influences that we're not even really aware of. They did these cool experiments where they had a bunch of people read these groups of words, and when the words included things like slow and lethargic and bored and indifferent and apathetic, the speed those people walked to the next room was significantly slower than the people who got other words that had nothing to do with that, and significantly slower than their walk was when they walked to the room. So those kinds of things change our attitude without even realizing it. We're watching things on television, we're seeing things in the world. We hear two truths. Absolutely, both are true. There's a whole lot of people in the world that have it better than me. There's a whole lot of people in the world that have it worse than me. Those are both true statements. So which one resonates with you? Which one do you think about, wow, there's a whole lot of people that have things better than me and I don't have enough and I wish I had? Or are you one of those people who go, wow, look there's so many people who have it worse than me. I'm so grateful. I'm so appreciative of how much I do have and compared. Both are exactly true statements. But your preconceived notion, the way you think of the story you've written so far, is going to dramatically affect your future because you're going to lean toward one of those concepts. You're going to see the glass half full. You're going to see the glass half empty. You're going to be a big-time dreamer. You're going to be a really afraid to dream at all kind of person. And you know right now, because the script's written, you've already written the script, exactly how that's going to go, unless you change the script.
Writing the story of your life is another way of talking about taking responsibility. I sometimes have a concern that people, when they hear it's important to take responsibility for their lives, they really miss the deep message. It's like the way love is used so often in advertising, and then somebody says they love you, and it doesn't have much meaning because it's been co-opted by this flagrant abuse and responsibility. My God, politicians even say that our party is the party of personal responsibility, meaning the other political party is not interested in personal responsibility. I think the word is getting overused. So we want you to rethink the whole concept of what it means to take ownership of your perception as well as your response, to take ownership of what you do with what's done to you. I saw a YouTube the other day. Somebody emailed me a link to this really cool video. It was animated, and it was like this ninja samurai warrior guy sitting in meditation, and a fly buzzes around his head, and he's this ninja meditator, so he's not disturbed at first, but then the fly lands on his cheek, and so he resists the temptation at first to swat it, but his cheek begins to flinch a little bit, and then finally he does swat at the fly, and he misses, and the fly keeps buzzing around him. Finally he jumps up out of meditation, pulls the sword out of its sheath, and whack, as a ninja warrior would do, slices the fly into two pieces. Goes back to meditation. It's an animated, cartoon type of film, though, so the fly we see becomes two flies and reanimates itself, and now they're both buzzing around the guy, and so he leaps up out of meditation again, and he's swatting both flies with the sword and not doing very well, and then the whole mood changes, as if this warrior remembers the reason he meditates, to take responsibility for what he does with his life. And the fly turns into cherry blossoms floating down through the air, and it morphs to an image of him back in meditation, and in his palm he has what at first looks like a cherry blossom, but then turns into a fly that just flies away. And it's a beautiful little message about your thoughts and your attitudes and your beliefs creating a reality that most of us are trained to see as objective, when in fact it is subjective. Actually, it's both, of course. There are objective qualities, real-world qualities. Flies are not really cherry blossoms, of course, or vice versa. But you understand the message. Life is what you make it. Why would a fly buzzing around you irritate you? Why does the baby crying in the restaurant bother us so much? Why would a barking dog keep you awake at night, as if you've never heard a dog bark, or it brings up images of danger of some sort? No, it's just you decide, how am I going to sleep with that dog barking? And so every time the dog barks, it wakes you up a little more. When you could simply say to yourself with a nice, slow, deep breath, every time that dog barks, I'll go deeper and become more relaxed. And every time the dog barks, it seems a little farther away, all in your imagination, of course, until you're sound asleep. That's responsibility. That's just a simple example of writing the story of your life.
So what you think ahead of time, what you feel ahead of time, dramatically affects the way you deal with whatever happens. Now, it may not affect whatever happens. Stuff happens, but it dramatically affects the way you experience and deal with whatever happens. Confirmation bias is a big part of this. We expect it to be a certain way, and we look back and say, yep, I was right. We always love to look back and say, yes, I was right. I mean, let's say you have two people, and one of them has this belief that there's a lot more short people in the world than there are tall people. And this other person thinks, no, there's a lot more tall people than there are short people. Of course, that's all relative to how tall you are, but one person thinks that the world really has a lot more short people. The other person thinks the world has really a lot more tall people. And at the end of the week, you sit them down and you say, now, this last week, did you see more tall people or did you see more short people? Regardless of what actually happened, regardless of whether there were taller people or short, they're going to have a belief that they were right. This last week absolutely confirmed my belief that there's more short people than there are tall people, or vice versa. Confirmation bias. When a person thinks that the world is full of scary, dangerous people, like don't talk to strangers. If you don't know them, they're probably evil. Then guess what they're going to see everywhere they look. When somebody else believes that, yes, there are some bad apples in the barrel, but gosh, the world is full of really, really nice people for the most part. Guess what kind of world they're going to see. So again, the world didn't change, but the world really did change because of the way that we're looking at the world. We tend to have a belief system, and our mind makes up stories to confirm that it's true. We do this thing called rationalization. It's really remarkable. We have an emotional feeling and we do something, and then we figure out a way to justify it. We our brain in retrospect thinks, oh, well, that's why I meant to do that. That's why I did that. No, so much of what we do, we're not conscious of doing. We're just doing because it's part of the programming. It's part of the script we've already written. How did we write that script? We didn't write that script with the stuff that happened to us. We wrote that script with the habits and the behaviors and the attitudes we created in our lives. Procrastination is such a huge part of life. For so many people, it's the debilitator. And if you are a procrastinator, then you've already written the script for so many things that are going to happen in your life. So many of those important things that you need to do, early because it would be way better. You won't. You just won't, because unless you do something about it, you're going to be a procrastinator the next time and the next time and the next time. If you have a fear, this is one of my pet peeves, this fear of disappointment that parents create by telling kids, don't get your hopes up too high. If you've got that fear of disappointment, then there's a big opportunity, a big chance to do something really big. You're not going to go for that. Not if there's a chance that you won't get it and then you'll be disappointed, and disappointed debilitating to you. You won't go for that. You've already written the script for the way you're going to handle your future. You wrote the story of your life up until now, and what you've written up until now is writing the story of your future. So what Michael and I are saying is you can accept what you have and expect to see the world through the same colored lenses you've been looking through, or using the power of focused passion, the power of narrow awake, the power of the alpha brainwave state, you can reprogram your mind. And instead of becoming a procrastinator, become a person who starts on time. Instead of being a pessimist, be a cautious optimist. You can rewrite the future of your life right now by reprogramming your mind.
Well, since you're talking about pet peeves, I got to talk about mine. One of them, the big one really for me over the years, especially in talk radio, is binary thinking. And this either or, black and white, everything or nothing, all differences or opposites kind of mentality, I began to realize is a function of anxiety and stress. And the more nervous and worried and fearful we are, the more likely we are to miss the variations, the permutations, and even the two-way street we're talking about here. I remember somebody calling my radio program and saying something about their kid eating dirt. And I said, well, oddly, I just read an article about that, and it's not uncommon for little babies to eat dirt, and really, not such a bad thing. It introduces bacteria and germs into their bodies and helps build their defense systems. And I used it as an allegory for parenting in the larger sense, like what happens if you're overprotective as a parent, and how do you gradually introduce a child to the evils of the world. Well, the next call, as you might imagine, was somebody just freaked out that I'm telling parents on the radio to feed dirt to their children because it's good for them. And I had to say, no, slow down, take a breath, relax. I didn't say that at all. Well, we've got that same thing going on between synchronicity and magical thinking. And I'm not sure, Steve, that we've ever really talked about the give and take, the yin and yang in these two things. Like, where does synchronicity become magical thinking and vice versa? I mean, even Freud said sometimes a cigar is only a cigar. So are there such things as meaningful coincidences, or as Carl Jung called them, synchronicities? Yeah. No question about it.
But are there such a things as just coincidences? Well, yeah, no doubt about it.
And magical thinking and that confirmation, what did you call it? Confirmation bias?
Yeah.
Herman Cain talks about the magic in the number 45. And he puts it in chapter 9 of his book because, of course, 4 and 5 add up to 9. And then goes on to tell a number of stories about how meaningful 45 is in his life. Robert Anton Wilson does the same thing in The Cosmic Trigger. He pretends that the number 23 is very powerful, but he doesn't tell you he's pretending or goofing on you until deeper into the book. So for the first few days you're reading the book, you go around and everywhere you look, it's, oh my God, what is he on to? There's another 23. In fact, as I was reading his book, I ended up renting a home at 12323 Culver Avenue in Mar Vista, California, and the zip code was 90023. I mean, I just couldn't get away from it. I don't remember what my phone number was, but I'm sure it had 2 3s in it also. It's like you can drive yourself crazy, and some obsessive people do, with magical thinking and looking for numbers and everything, and yet don't you see that you're actively creating that perception? Every time there's a 23, or in Herman Cain's case, a 45, of course it's going to leap out at you because you've programmed yourself. And if you've made something negative out of these numbers or something else, like, oh, bad things always happen to me in this situation, or I know this is going to fall apart, it just always goes that way in my life. All right, okay. Your subconscious mind is so powerful that it will unconsciously find dozens of ways to conspire with events and circumstances in your life to bring that about. I heard somebody on the news last night say, don't forget to tune in for... Why would you say don't forget? When it's so much more intelligent to say, be sure and remember. Words have power, and when it comes to writing the story of your life, my goodness, write a positive story filled with optimism and enthusiasm. A little rain will fall, it always does, but You might learn to dance in the rain.
What's wrong with rain? Rain gets such a bad... I love rain. I don't know why rain gets such a bad...
We don't live in the Northwest or in, a colder place.
Well, cold rain, but warm rain is such a wonderful experience. I live in the rainforest in Maui. I love the rain. What we tend to do really is see what we expect. There's a wonderful story called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy that I was reading about, where you get a whole bunch of people shooting guns at a barn door, and then when they're all done, then you draw the bullseyes where most of the bullets are, And that's what people tend to do. They like, there's all this stuff out there, and then they look for what they're looking for unconsciously. There it is, see? That's what I see. I'm convinced there's more foreign cars than there are American-made cars, and so all week long I'm seeing these foreign cars, and I'm not even noticing the American cars. It's really how powerfully we shape our future with the story we've already written so far. So take a look at that attitude, those habits that you have. Habits and fears that you have. A fear of heights is probably already changing the likelihood of you visiting Machu Picchu or not. Those fears that we have, those belief systems we have, change our future before it ever has a chance to happen. So one of the wonderful things that you can do, and call it introspection or reflection or meditation, but go inside and find out what's the script you've already written. A lot of it's unconscious. You're not aware of these ideas that you have. They're there on some level. Of course, you know that you know them, but you're not conscious of them. You haven't thought about them. Some of them are habits you've had since childhood. Some are habits you've developed since puberty, but some of them are relatively new, but they're just there, and they're just affecting everything that you do. There was a funny sentence somebody once said a long time ago that a Republican is a Democrat who's been mugged or something like that. It's like once something happens and changes your life all of a sudden, or when you're poor, you're a Democrat, and when you get rich, you become a Republican. It's just the way you think that changes the way you behave in the real world. So what's the current script you have? Take a look at those big issues in your life. What do you think about God? What do you think about politics? What do you think about money? Those huge what attitude do you have about money? The attitude you have about money right now is going to dramatically affect whether you become prosperous or stay break even or even turn into a poverty situation in the future. It's not about income. Prosperity doesn't have anything to do with income. Poverty doesn't have to do with income. It has to do with your attitude. It's your belief system. If you have poverty consciousness, the first thing that you think when money comes in is a bad thought. What do I have to spend this on? And you spend it all. If you have break even, you have a good thought. What do I want to spend this on? And you spend it all. And if you have prosperity, you have a great thought. How much of this can I save and invest? And you save and invest some of it. It's like that thought. It's going to change your reality. If you think that this kind of people are good people and those kind of people are bad people, then you've already decided who you're going to hang out with in the future. You already limited your ability to hang out with those kind of people because you think right now those are bad kind of people.
What happens is you miss the goodness in the people you've labeled bad, and you stop being careful of the badness in the people you've decided are good. Few things are as foolish, hear me clearly, as dividing the world into good guys and bad guys. And anybody that tries to get you to do that is seeking to use fear to manipulate you. There's no such thing as good people or bad people in the world. Every single individual has good and bad potential within them. We referred just a few weeks ago to that classic Native American story that you read on the internet every once in a while about the grandfather with the good wolf and the bad wolf, and they're constantly battling within him. And the little boy says, "Well, Grandpa, which one wins?" And the elder grandfather says, "The one I feed." That is wisdom, my friends. There is a yin and a yang in all things. The polarities are discussed in, Taoism is built around this. Buddhism includes this. Confucius talked about the truth being found in paradox. It's in Jewish Kabbalistic wisdom and Christian mysticism as well, that everything is in everything. It's always to a relative degree. We're not saying there isn't good and bad. We're just saying, like that symbol of the Tao, there's the black side and the white side, the everything side and the nothing side, but there's a dot of the opposite in each. You know, you can go out in the pendulum swing to 99.1, or I guess 99.9 to 0.1, however you want to gauge it, but the pendulum cannot reach 100.0. There's no point in the swing of the pendulum where it is not influenced by both extremes. And you can do yourself a real favor when it comes to writing the story of your life, to recognize that what appears to be bad can be redeemed, can be transformed, uplifted, transmuted, there's lots of great words for it, improved to something really good. You can learn lessons from what other people might call failure. So you account and adjust for the negativity in your life. Even that which is bad then becomes, well, not so bad if I could learn from it. And at the same time, the good may sometimes be disappointing. Or you meet somebody that you trusted and relied on, and they betrayed you, and now it's shattered your faith in humanity. Or this true love that was so beautifully rich and romantic ended up in a broken heart. And now I guess I can just never love again because I'll never be able to trust the other person. Well, what that really is a refusal to trust yourself, you see. The more you can make these issues about the world around you, about yourself instead, the more you empower yourself. This is not shifting blame. This is abandoning the concept of blame altogether and saying, if this person broke my heart, or if this person lied to me and betrayed me, I have to learn to be a better judge of character. It's not who do I trust, it's how can I learn to trust myself as a judge of character? What do I need to change within me to pick better friends and better lovers and be more realistic about life, the part that does come at you as raw material out of which you write, create, and manifest the story of your life?
People argue and say, no, some people just have good lives, some people have bad lives. I mean, you know, like some people, they're born rich and they've got all this stuff and, you know, they go to the finest schools, and other kids are born poor and they get, it's like, no, you can't say that it's attitude. Well, you know, one of the most fascinating studies I've ever read where they took these two groups. One group was a group of people who won the lottery. The other group was a group of people who became paraplegic. And they measured their happiness. And they measured before, and the people who won the lottery, their happiness went up. I mean, and the people who became paraplegic, their happiness went down. But a year later, in both cases, their happiness had come exactly back to where it was before they won the lottery or before they became paraplegic. So, yeah, life has an influence, an effect on it for sure. But it's so much more about the attitude. It's so much more about the perception and the response. If it's a three-piece thing, if life is a three-part thing, it's stimulus, perception, and response. 2/3 of it is under your control. 1/3 of it, you have a little bit of say. 2/3 of it can be completely under your control, but that control you've put on autopilot. So you need to re-examine the autopilot setting. You need to look inside and say, now, what is my autopilot set on? Because I can reset my autopilot on anything I believe in. But what's it set on now so I know how I'm going to face the future? Where are my habits? Where are my beliefs? Where are my attitudes? What's my script that I've written up until today?
How many times in your life have you been backed into a corner financially and maybe had a meeting with your spouse or your significant other, your partner, and said, I don't know how we're going to get it together. It looks like we can pay the mortgage or the rent, but I'm worried about the phone bill or this energy bill for the electricity this month. Man, what are we going to do? Or we have this unexpected health care bill, and you torment yourself. Just, I don't know, we got to rob from Peter to pay Paul. We could not pay this bill to pay that bill. And then at the end of the month, you look around and somehow you scraped by. Maybe it was close. And maybe there are those months where you have to put something off until the next month and then you catch up a little bit. And I'm not saying that People never fall into disaster. It does happen. But I'm asking you in your life to consider the number of times that you thought, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble, and yet something happened. And then that happened again, and it happened again. How many dozens of times do you think? How many scores? How many hundreds of times, perhaps, throughout your life has something just sort of magically come along to save the day? And my question is, how many times does that have to happen before you begin to consider that maybe there's some sort of wind at your back, some sort of cosmic breeze that is moving you forward? Or like I sometimes think of surfing in this regard, where it would be my job to maintain my balance and determine my overall direction, but the water is lifting me up and carrying me forward. I say I have to steer and I have to balance, but I am supported and carried forward by life. You are, and you have to participate in that. You can assist, or you can throw out an anchor, I suppose, and make things a whole lot worse with your funky negative attitude that you call being realistic, but you're just dragging yourself down with your negative, self-defeating, self-loathing expectations. Now, again, I need to emphasize, Steve and I are not suggesting that you go from being a negative thinker to a positive thinker that ignores and denies the negative. We're just saying adjust for and account for the negative as opportunities to learn, so that you don't have to keep repeating those mistakes. And then you get better and better. If good stuff comes along, that's your reward. If retribution is what life has in store for you, you will learn, and you still move up a couple of rungs on the ladder. And when you get this in your life, you can give up the torment. You can, as the wisest women and men of all cultures and all times have insisted, sit back and laugh at how perfect life usually is, in spite of its appearances, especially when you have a partner. If you have a marriage, if you have a partner, if you have a relationship that works like a team, and when times are tough, you turn to each other and say, I need your help with this. Let's pull together in the same way at the same time. The way a team of horses is trained to lean into the harness at the same time and work together and to feel each other as a team working together. Because, many relationships, when things get tough, we turn on each other and start to blame each other. And so the kinds of things that destroy marriages are the very things that successful marriages use to make them stronger. It's all attitude. It's all in the story that you wish to write. Do you want to write a tragedy, or do you want to write a drama with a lot of comedy and fun and happiness in it? It's your choice.
It is, because regardless of what happens, you can write either of those stories. I mean, take a look at, two of the worst things that could happen would be cancer and heart attacks. Those are two of the three primary killers in our society. When a person gets cancer, they often feel victim. They often feel like, the big C attacked me, and same thing with a heart attack. Although we all know, lifestyle choices have an effect. But now let's look at the other side of that. What about cancer survivors and heart attack survivors? For the most part, they're happier now than they ever were before. For the most part, the adversity was a diamond dust that shined them up and made them stronger and made them... I find most people who've survived a very life-threatening illness or a heart attack, they have more appreciation for life. They turn their lives around quite frequently. It's not the bad stuff in life that makes life bad. It's when you don't do good stuff with the bad stuff. No matter what happens, it's the bad stuff that can make life the best of all. It's the hardest stuff to go through. Losing loved ones makes us appreciate life more. Everything bad that happens with the right attitude turns it into something good. Some of the greatest things that will ever happen to you are the worst things that could happen that you're prepared for. That's the real key. Because when half of what you worry about is something bad's going to happen, but the other half of what you worry about is you won't know what to do if something bad happens. And if you're prepared, you have a good attitude, you know I can handle anything. I mean, no matter what life's going to throw at me, I'm a great person. I can handle whatever. If you've got that kind of attitude, it doesn't matter what life throws at you. So it's really about not so much what happens to you. Yeah, good stuff's going to happen, I promise. Bad stuff's going to happen, I promise. In everybody's lives, that's going to be the case. Yeah, in some people's lives, there'll be some more good stuff, and in some other people's lives, there'll be more bad stuff. But you take a look at people who had really hard lives that, really a lot of adversity that they fought against, and they overcame, and they became incredibly successful. And you look at other people who were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. What's that great Paul Simon song, Richard Cory? They say that Richard Cory owned one half of this whole town with political connections to spread his wealth around, and he ends up going into his room and blowing his brains out, just because he's so lonely. What you have in life, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, whether you've got it, the only thing that really makes a difference, Michael was just talking about, do you have love? If you have love, that makes a huge difference. But other than that, it's your attitude that you bring to your world.
Janis Joplin said that too. She said, lonely is playing a crowd of 10,000 people, all of them cheering, shouting out how much they love you, and then you go back to the hotel alone with just a bottle of Jack and bad TV. And, counseling can help that, because even alone it can be wonderful and rich. It's not like you have to have other people, but having peace with yourself and learning how to enjoy times of solitude is something you can then bring to a relationship. And to have a relationship in which neither partner is needy, like they desire to share from their bounty, but they're not empty vessels seeking to be filled by the other one, that's a formula for happiness and fulfillment. And those stories have happy endings, you see. The game is rigged. If you adjust your attitude, your story must have a happy ending. You ride off into the sunset, living happily ever after. I have to paraphrase now, a quote from The Little Prince by, help me, Steve, St. Antoine Exupery?
Exupery, I think.
That's,
yeah, I've always had trouble pronouncing that one, too.
Exupery, I believe. And he says, love is not looking at each other, but sitting side by side together, looking out at the world. David Viscott, the radio psychiatrist, said something real similar. He said, love in a relationship is feeling the sun from both sides. Isn't that nice? You see? But first, you got to pull it together. You've got to be the optimist. You've got to learn to fill in your own empty spots by adjusting your attitudes and your belief systems and your expectations. Believe in yourself. Not the frightened self. That's just the ego. Its job is to be afraid and keep you alive in a jungle-type primitive setting. And we've pretty much, as civilized human beings, grown beyond that. We're just leaving that behind. People are losing their fear of terrorism. Have you noticed? After, 2, 3, 4 wars on terror and trillions of dollars spent and hundreds of thousands of civilians killed, people are beginning to realize they're in greater danger in the backyard on the ladder or in the bathroom taking a shower. That's where you're much more likely to be injured, or driving recklessly on the freeway. These are the threats. You are the biggest danger to yourself. And if you manage that, when you manage that, and as you take responsibility for managing yourself, then relationships begin to work. Then, and I don't mean just relationships with people, but relationships with career, relationships with prosperity, relationships with health, it all begins to fall into order. When you write a positive, love-based, heartfelt story about yourself, not just what's happened so far, but how you're managing what's happening to you now and what you're going to do with the future that you can see as you look on down the highway.
A future which is to a great extent created by your positive or your negative expectations of it. So what's the argument for optimism? Well, I think it's easy to make an argument against pessimism, which is quite simply, it doesn't make any sense to do something where you get sick and tired of something that hasn't even transpired. I mean, it's like, it's illogical, right? I mean, thinking something's going to go bad over and over and over again is only creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's likely to. It doesn't make you more prepared to deal with it. Thinking of it 12 times, it makes you no more prepared to deal with it than if you've thought about it 2 times. You haven't figured out what you're going to do. You're just planning it happening. Well, it's important to do that. It's important to look at what could go wrong. It's important to look at least the worst-case scenario, because, of course, you could never figure out everything that could go wrong, but at least have a plan for worst-case scenario. It'd be stupid to be dumbfounded and have no idea what you'd do if something terrible happened, but once is enough. Michael gave me the philosophy, worry once. That's a great way of saying it. Worry once. Well, have a plan for what you do in worst case scenario. Know you can handle anything less than that. And then you can focus your attention on what you do want, because although you need to think about both, you need to have a plan for what you don't want, what will you do if something bad happens. But it doesn't have to be 50-50. It doesn't even have to be. It can be 1%, 99%. All you need to do is once go to that, what am I going to do if something goes wrong, then go to how I want things to happen. Because very simply stated, you're going to go where you look. And if you spend most of your time looking at the worry of what you don't want, your mind thinks that's what you do want. 88% of your mind can't tell the difference between what you want and what you don't want. If you're thinking about it, it thinks you want that. It doesn't have a backup will. It doesn't have a way of going, oh, no, wait a minute, I don't really want that. If you're imagining it, it's what you must want. So if you're spending your time in worry, then you're creating a future where those things you're worried about are likely to transpire. And if you're creating a life of positive thinking, that doesn't mean that what you're imagining is going to happen. It doesn't. What it means is whatever happens, you're going to deal with it in a positive way. If you're aiming at the bullseye, you might not hit the bullseye, but you're going to get closer than if you weren't aiming at anything, that's for sure. And the most important thing to understand is the point of life is not to hit the bullseye. It's not to get there. It's to go there. It's the journey, not the destination. So why have a great bullseye? Well, because the journey toward the greatest bullseye is the greatest journey. The journey toward what you want the most, the journey toward what would be most fulfilling is the best journey. The people that have those same dreams and aspirations are on that same road with you. You'll meet the most wonderful people along the way and have the greatest experiences along the way. So set up a self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm going to, whatever happens, I'm going to make the best out of it. Whatever happens, good stuff's going to happen, and I'm going to really appreciate that. Bad stuff's going to happen, and I'm going to be able to deal with that well. I don't have to control what happens. Good stuff's going to happen, bad stuff's going to happen. But what I can control right now, by writing my script, is the attitude I'm going to have, the belief system I'm going to carry, and the point of view I'm going to choose to see that future from.
You bet. Let's take 5 minutes right now just to begin to write that story. What do you say, huh? Why don't you close your eyes and relax, sit back, and begin to relax. A couple of shoulder shrugs and some head rolls and 3 or 4 slow, deep breaths. And as you exhale, create and sense a feeling of letting go. Feel safe. Safe and relaxed. As you breathe, pulling in strength and power and releasing pressure and tension. The sigh of relief is a sigh of release. Feel the letting go. And then let your breathing find its natural rhythm as you give yourself the time. You make the time to begin to write the story of your life.
And doesn't it make sense that coming from here, a place where you're relaxed and free of fear, that the story that will appear will be happier, will be full of joy, will be a story with experiences that you'll truly enjoy. It makes so much sense that if you're feeling stressed, if you're coming from tension or from duress, that the story you'll write will lead to a mess. But when you're relaxed and when you're safe and free of fear, there comes this sensation. It just seems to appear, a feeling of confidence, a feeling of enjoyment and love and happiness, and it's just so sweet. And from this place, where you're feeling so much more complete, you can write that story and write it clear that the story is about love and dealing with fear, working through fear, and making the journey appear to be the journey that you choose. Because your mind, your amazing mind, is such a powerful tool for you to use. So it's not about the details, it's about the way you feel. It's not about what happens, it's about how you deal. It's not about what's going to occur. It's whether you're feeling sure or unsure, safe and free. Write that story, and from that story, be.
Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And so let's consider that the beginning of your story has pretty much been written. Although it's never too late to do a little rewrite, to put a twist on the negative, the pitiful, the unfair bits that you've been holding on to, the grudges, the martyrdom, the self-pity. It casts far too long a shadow and will interfere with the middle and the ending. So consider that the beginning of your story is written, but you might want to rewrite it a little bit and look at what you've learned from the hardships in your life and how it's prepared you for the rest of your life, what you've learned and how you're a better person for it because of what you have done and are doing with what's happened to you up till now. And now we move into the now of your life. And consider the same process. How can I best reframe, improve my attitude about the now? Look at it in a more positive light. See how, in fact, today, this very day, is an opportunity for you to do better, to be kinder and more considerate with other people, to be the kind of person for the balance of this day today, and maybe even you can begin to think about tomorrow and the next day and next week, being the kind of person that you want other people to be, but you were waiting for them to do it first, and now you're going to, in the story of your life, decide to go first and be that better person as you consider part 3, the rest of your life.
So now's the part where you can write the future that you see. You can write the story of what you choose to be. You can make some changes, and I'd suggest 3. Be more confident and more optimistic, and let go of procrastination. Reprogramming your mind in a recreation, more confident, more optimistic, and much less procrastination. Imagine those and the sensation of recreation. See your life going forward where you're always on time and you've got things finished early and you're feeling really fine and you're thinking that things are going to work out always for the best, and you know you'll do wonderful at every single test, and even if hard stuff happens, you'll be there, you'll be fine. Imagine that optimism, that confidence inside of your mind. And you rewrite the story of what is yet to be. You rewrite the story confidently. A story of a future, no matter what occurs, you face it confidently. You're feeling self-assured, and whatever happens, you'll do your best. You'll make it work for you. It's all about attitude, how you feel, and what you do. So write the story of your future, what is yet to be, coming from optimism, confidence, and being on time and feeling free.
And as the author of the story of your life, you are the authority. You're the boss. Remember when you were a little kid? You're not the boss of me. Now's the time to mean it. Be the boss. Be the author, the authority in your life, and bring that simple, quiet confidence of being the authority in your life, the author, with you as you reorient toward the waking state, bringing to mind what you'll see in a moment when we ask you finally to open your eyes, wide awake and alert, rested and refreshed. Inhaling a big, deep breath, hold as you peak, and as you exhale now, open your eyes, wide awake and alert, rested, feeling really good, back in the room, better than before.
Wow, you know that piece you just said at the end, Michael, about being the authority of your life? That's such a huge part. Whoever you give authority to is dramatically going to influence your future life. Whoever you decide, and it's totally up to you to decide who to give authority to, but if it's, you're still giving authority to your parents, you're still giving authority to the church or their politics or the leaders, whoever you give authority to, what they say, you're going to give way more weight than it's probably worth, and that's going to dramatically influence you. So take a look at those kinds of things. We have these biases, authority bias, we have a confirmation bias, we have normalcy bias. We want things to be normal. So we expect the abnormal we don't think is going to happen very often. Well, the abnormal happens quite frequently, actually. Normal's not what happens all the time.
I agree. I think anybody that is religious or in any way at all spiritual should consider and reconsider on a regular basis what it means to be in the image of that which created you. That puts you in charge. That makes you the boss. You're in the image of what created all that is. So how about creating in your life, in your universe, all that is? Join us next week for the series, Finding Yourself, that's the self, the authority, in paradise.
And if you really want to find yourself in our paradise, we've got another Maui Mindfulness Meditation Retreat coming up next year, 2012, in April. So
that's right, April 22nd.
Info at focuspassion.com. We'll send you some information about it. It's going to be 6 days in paradise, and you're going to let go of all of your stress and fill up with just this incredible paradisical feeling so that you can bring that home and have it in a snowstorm or a traffic jam or the middle of a busy meeting. It's an amazing experience. Hope you can join us next April for the Maui Mindfulness Meditation Retreat.
And these programs are timeless, so let's say you're talking about the last week of April of the year 2012, and if that date's gone by the time you stumble across this in an archive someplace, well, check anyway, because there will be more. Maui is a beautiful place to discover yourself, and there's no better way to release stress and anxiety and fear. Let all your problems go by knowing the truth of who you are. Be the boss, be the authority of the story of your life, as well as be gentle and love life and take care of each other, For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.